All right, we're live from the bunker. This is kind of unusual, but the passing show, it's not happening right now. I'm not out on the streets filming what's going on in Washington, D.C. Instead, I'm here talking with you all who are maybe here, maybe you're not. It looks like we got Ann Begler has joined so far. And I'll take questions. You can ask me anything. Hi, Debbie Hope. Good to see you. Um, there's no rhyme or reason for this particular broadcast from the bunker live as we are here in Harrowings. The passing show is on outside right now, but it's raining cats and dogs in Washington, D.C., which is good. You know, it's going to wash out the atmosphere a bit. We need it for the plants and life in general. I think about all life on the planet quite a bit and how we can be good ancestors and good stewards of what's been entrusted to us through dint of being alive. The chances of any of us being here at all is pretty remote. But those of you who've joined, welcome. We'll be talking about who knows what. I was going to see if I could get the everyday junglist on, so I think I'll just send him an invite and see if he can come on. If he can't, that's fine. I like to have him on because he's a paid subscriber, for one thing, part of my board of directors, and he's interesting to talk to. I think I might invite Bruno Batati to see if he's around. Let's send that invite. And let's invite Charlotte Dilson. Oh, I can only invite two. So I've invited those two guys. If they show up, great. Or otherwise, cancel their invitations. No telling whether they'll be able to make it or not. If they don't, fine. So I have been busy reflecting on an anniversary of Import to Me. 3 years ago, I was tapped to be the program manager and took on that responsibility for a contract to which I was subbed um, through my company. And the prime, their guy wasn't cutting it. So the government asked me to take the reins until they could find somebody appropriate, which we did. And that guy cut me loose. I don't know exactly at whose behest entirely, but it was around the time of my mother's fall and her subsequent move to senior living. And I think I was out of pocket too much, as well as apparently one of my team members undermined me. And that does happen. I thought I was a good boss and, respectful of everybody as much as they were respectful of me. But I had a lead position and I had a responsibility I felt to actually be aware and awake on the job about what other people were doing. And I guess the government, some of them didn't feel that way and decided to listen to a younger member of the team. And I was dismissed, which was fine. It set me free from a wage slavery situation, which I would have never left on my own, and gave me the window of opportunity to start the Harold B. Gill Foundation, LLC, of which Harrowings is the publishing arm. You may be able to see my hat has a little symbol on it. This is not some sort of neo-Nazi thing or anything. It's the Fife and Drum Corps of Colonial Williamsburg that seeks to preserve the traditions of the American Revolution that led to the country we have. And I think a lot about this because a lot of my colleagues back there were historians. My father was a research historian there from 1961 through 2015 or so, I think. It's when he finally was rolled off after being consulting editor of the Colonial Williamsburg Journal, which shortly thereafter was shut down and replaced with a magazine called Trend and Tradition. So a lot of his work still exists out there, though, from the Colonial Williamsburg Journal days, a lot of articles, his books as well. He did a number of research books as well as editing a couple of journals. One was Richard Randolph Carter's Arctic expeditions called Searching for the Franklin Expedition, which documents Richard Randolph Carter's sailing up with a party in the U.S. Navy looking for the Franklin expedition, which disappeared in the Pacific Northwest, or not Pacific Northwest, but looking for the Northwest Passage up in Canada, eventually to be found many, many years later. Very interesting story, the story of Sir John Franklin and his exploration. So a lot of people went up there looking for him, but the journals of the Arctic expedition that Richard Randolph Carter was on ended up being an award-winning book with the Naval Institute for Best Primary Source of the year or so. John Lyman Award, I think it won. And then there's also the Journal of Nicholas Cresswell that he produced called A Man Apart, and the edition that was heavily annotated by himself and assisted by George M. Curtis III, also a deceased research historian who was at Hanover College for quite a bit of his career. Dad learned of Jim's death only when his palliative care nurse suggested he call up some friends. And he said, "Oh, my friends are dead," but he didn't think Jim was dead, but turned out he was. And I think that's about the time my father decided to let go in April 2024. So since then, I've been, like I said, working on stewarding his legacy. I got a chance to really dedicate myself more to it after the job went away on August 2nd of 2024, 1 year to the day after I saved the contract by the government submission. The Prime also acknowledged it by giving me a $10,000 bonus for sitting in there and doing that extra layer of work to make sure that the customer was happy and satisfied with us enough to continue the contract through its term. They were thinking of cutting it a year earlier because each year has an option year. And that was before the days of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, that cut so many contracts, in fact, cut USAID completely to the bone to the point where they don't exist anymore. There are many different changes that are happening in Washington, D.C. I try to monitor them, but from the standpoint of the front lines, just watching the passing show, watching things as they evolve. Sees Faith Binds us is here as well. That's three besides me. Good to have you on board. And this is just live from the bunker, just me relating a little bit of my who, what, when, and where, with the idea that we need to raise our sights a little bit and look at the bigger picture. I've gotten a lot of likes on a picture of some Canadair water bombers picking up water in the French southern regions where they're having a lot of wildfires, and they're French flyers doing this. A lot of people are just seeing Canadair, brand of the water bombers, not noticing the French part right in front of it. And everybody's talking about, oh, the wonderful Canadians. Well, yeah, they built the planes, yes. And the French bought them and they're using them. And it's a shame they have to use them, but it's necessary to try to fight the wildfires that are threatening a lot of the country. Now, there are many different reasons why these wildfires are happening, those natural and unnatural. And we have to look at these things together, I think, in the cold light of day and look at the facts as opposed to getting all political about them. There's an unfortunate tendency for people to think that, oh, it's an arson and arson will happen and that's all it is. Or it's lightning strikes, probably is. And it's just a natural part of the process. This is quite normal. But people are being forced to evacuate in huge numbers. Our population, pressure is quite high. There's this disparity between the haves and the have-nots in the world that is causing tremendous amounts of people to want to move to areas where they have a chance, where they might be born to a region where they don't have a chance. And, this is something that is an inequality that is forced by choices we're making. There are people in power who've made choices about logistics and about supply and demand that have a system that is extractive to try to build up as much stakeholder value as possible, for instance, for our stock markets. We're all sort of forced into it, in fact. When I was a kid, my parents had pensions with the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, a nonprofit organization, but they had a pension fund. And I expect they're still drawing on that. I don't have insight into their details, but my sister's managing that. And the point being that those things went away, and now we're invested in, I still am invested in different markets, which are spread out over investments across the entire stock market, internationally, nationally. And the money market folks who maintain these funds do their best to game the system to make sure they give the maximum amount for their investors, which I'm glad of in some ways. But at the same time, if I was really conscious of the impacts of every investment, I'd probably be kind of ashamed of myself because every cent spent is a vote for the kind of world we are co creating. I keep hammering on that subject. We need to think about how we are spending and do it mindfully. My wife and I are just back in from a shopping trip. I made some choices and what I decided to support by my purchases. And that nudges the needle a little bit for whoever's stuff I bought. Same thing's true of all of us for everything we do. Every action we make, every thought we have, all of these go together and blend in to make a world that we are co creating and are going to be leaving to our children and our children's children down through the generations. I like to think in terms of 700 years. And if you'll go back with me to 1326, tell me what you know about the world in 1326. I can tell you, and that's sort of rhetorical, but you may tell me if you wish in the comments. Um, I can tell you that in 1326, we were just about to go into the Black Death. There were a lot of people alive then who were surviving that and would go on to have children that would survive it. And those children would have children. But there's a bit of a bottleneck there for the European population in particular. And actually, globally, I think that plague really went around. I don't know if it impacted the Americas or not. But the bottom line is that because there was this pressure, it changed society. And the changes that happened led to what happened over the next 700 years. Now, 1326 might be a little bit to chew on, but think about 2726 and what the world will be like then. Based on the rate of change, based on our technologies, based on if we don't destroy ourselves in the meantime and our environment, the planet we live on. The rain now falling in Washington, D.C., may be washing out the air a bit. Things are getting rearranged. The earth has a way of healing itself. We saw that during the pandemic when everybody was locked down, not running around, burning a lot of gas. You started seeing clearer vistas. And I think that experiment taught us a few things. And it may have taught the people who have the most in terms of power. And a lot of power is associated with the system we have, which ascribes value. And it's all a fantasy upon which we agree. Since 1971, it's been that way, at least, since the Nixon shock. And if you don't know about it, we should research that and understand what happened in 1971 to change the monetary system from what was established at Bretton Woods after World War II, then established the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and how that was all arranged, and then go on into the future. It's very unfortunate, I believe, that we have a system right now that is perilously close to tipping over in the wrong direction. Although I think right now it is also being managed electronically in ways that keep it from doing that. Certainly when we almost tipped over in 2008, you saw the TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, come forward that bailed out the too big to fail banks. Lehman Brothers wasn't one of them, but others were bailed out and then paid it back. And so we danced right along the edge. And a lot of people suffered. A lot of people lost much more than you would think would be reasonable to lose. And it impacts our feelings of safety. It impacts our feelings of whether we can afford to speak our minds, to use our voices, to raise up and do anything about anything. I'm kind of astonished that in a very unpopular war, for instance, we're not seeing the protests we saw in Vietnam. Vietnam was much more unpopular, apparently, if you look at the amount of sheer numbers of people on the streets who were trying to get us out of it. It didn't get us out of it, as it turned out. The politicians really wielded the power. And if you watch Turning Point, the Vietnam War on Netflix, for instance, this series is pretty accessible. You'll see exactly how it unfolded and how we were kept in that war for political expediency by the Nixon administration. Unnecessarily. We got out under the Ford administration, and there was, of course, motions that could have been made earlier to get us out, but we didn't get out. We should never have gotten in. And that's one of the issues I have whenever I walk by the Vietnam War Memorial, which I do periodically. And I usually stop by and look at the name of Talmadge H. Alphen Jr. He's remembered because he was the first bass drummer of the Colonial Williamsburg Fife and Drum Corps, which my hat's all about. I'm an alum. There's alumni there, I guess it is. He didn't have to die on August 23rd, 1968, but he did. And his story is telling. I don't think he ever had a chance. His unit was forward based, and he was in the Special Forces, a radio man, staff sergeant. Cut off far before his prime. Apparently died of burns. It's a pretty horrific way to go. There are many ways to go, and none of them are really pretty for that matter, but I'm hoping I will just click off one day, where that's what the Gill men tend to do in my family. I am trying to monitor things so that I don't click off too soon, but there you go. It's a temp job. While I've got breath in the body, I can memorialize those who come before me. I can think about how we might be able to avoid making more casualties, whether it's the Iran war, whether it is more and this bloodshed that's happening in the Ukraine. By the way, the Turning Point series has another one on the Cold War, which goes right into the Ukraine war. And I highly recommend that people pay attention to what's happening out there. Warfare's changing. We should all know that by now, about all of these fairly cheap drones that are being used to overwhelm the ability for us to cut into them. Hope I don't click off. Well, I'll click off eventually. And one way or the other, we all are heading the same direction. The bottom line is that was Razia Imam Dazram, by the way, who is clicked in. Paul Case joined as well. We already had Ann Begler, Debbie Hoop, and Faith Binds Us as people who have stopped in. I've got 2 invitations out, but I don't think they're going to be joining, so I'm going to cancel the invitations to join in and have the conversation. If anybody does want to join, you can tell me, and we can invite you. I think I'll try to invite Charlotte, see if she's out there somewhere. I don't know. If she is online, maybe she'll see that. And who else can I invite? Let's see. Sue Cawthorn. Let's see if she's around. It's just for fun. There's no real rhyme or reason to this one. As I mentioned, I just wanted to go live for a little bit from the bunker. And as you can see, I've got this beautiful piece of artwork behind me. That was bought in a fundraiser that the Rolling Stone guy, I forget, Jan Winter or something is his name, and Nancy Pelosi was part of it too. It was in San Francisco, and this was to raise money for the Haight Street Free Clinic, which is part of the leftovers of the hippie generation, right? They have a free clinic there in the Haight, and this was up for auction. I think it might have come from Love on Haight. That is Haight. But Poor Love on Haight is one of my ideas. Invite Michael Markham. I don't know. I'll see if Michael Markham might be around. Let's see. I just disinvited. Don't see that name here. I could search for it by handle. Mark. Nothing's coming up. Tumbaru. Well, if he asked himself to be invited, I might do it. But it doesn't seem like I have one. He's at Toombaru. But if he doesn't ask, I'm not inviting him. Razia Imam Dazram. But thanks for the suggestion. I have no idea who that is. Maybe we'll look him up. We'll learn more. Okay, so what else is new? I don't have a lot more to say today. I haven't gotten anybody else to join. I'm going to cancel Sue's invitation and go back to see if I can get Everyday Junglist in here one more time, just in case. I did send him a message on direct message, but he could be busy or out and about. He's down in Tijuana, Mexico. Bruno Batati, who I suggested earlier was about an hour north of Rome, I think you said. We had a nice conversation the other day right before I went in and took an impromptu shift over daily provisions. Well, I am thinking a lot about this world we're in and how we might do better. Amplified Patty Smith a little while ago from her post from 6 days ago from Finland. She's since been in Rome. She's heading back to the States, I think, and I'll see her here in DC on September 1st at the Atlantis. Tonight, I plan to maybe get out of the house and go down to the Hamilton Live and catch Stanley Jordan. And Stanley plays dead, and it should be a good show. I think that's about it for today. Thank you for joining. If you have, be the change you want to see in the world. Remember, every cent we spend is a vote for the kind of world we're co-creating. The people respond to where the money flows. So be mindful. Think about what you're doing. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's all I got.